what a car! Blue, beautiful. Wide is my native land, with many forests, fields, and rivers. I am not aware of any other nation in the world where people breathe so freely. Except, it's extremely difficult to breathe behind the wheel of a ErAZ. The seating is such that you feel like you don't belong here. It's hard to find a comfortable position behind the wheel, and most of the time you just end up lying on it. Sometimes you try to find something on the right, but that something resists you. You're looking for the gear, it's there, but maybe not the right one. You poke at the gear lever like a kitten. Thank God there are only 3 gears here. We've already flown to space and back. Soon there will be perestroika and a universal disaster. The car is from '83, and here it has a gearbox from a 21st Volga, 3 gears. The country was united and indivisible, from Moscow all the way to Ukraine. The main automobile production was concentrated in the European regions. To be honest, there weren't enough cars for everyone, and cars meant progress, new construction sites, new jobs. It's no secret that ErAZ is RAV, and the story of how this car appeared is pretty typical for the Soviet auto industry. And the question is, which one is worse, ErAZ or RAV? Quality-wise, it's debatable. But let's have a bit of history. The RAV-977 appeared in 1959. The minibus design was advanced and kept up with the times, not just in the Soviet Union, but all over the world as time went on. Let's be honest, it was beautiful. Moving on. In 1962, an experimental batch of RAV trucks was produced in Riga. But the factory didn't have enough capacity, so production was moved to Yerevan. Yerevan, there was already a forklift factory there, and new buildings were being constructed. And it just so happened that the Council of Ministers of the Armenian SSR decided to use the plant's facilities to produce small vehicles with a payload capacity of up to 1 ton. A coincidence? Yes, a coincidence. That's how the Yerevan automobile plant came to be. Despite their external similarity, the vehicles differ from each other. First of all, in the side panels. Armenian engineers added stiffening ribs, again to the side panels and the roof. They are clearly visible. In addition, they added stampings under the windows, which also served as ribs, and they were also made with the future in mind. The Armenians generally improved the manufacturability of production. The body was basically assembled from panels of equal size, a sort of construction set. Which was quite progressive for that time. So here, you can't just take off the entire body, like you can, say, on a UAZ. Here it's integrated. In other words, the body is welded onto it. Essentially, the body is load-bearing. But the floor of the cargo compartment was covered with plywood and a rubber mat. In our case, it's covered with aluminum. As you can imagine, the durability of such a solution is questionable. Although, knowing the quality of metal and anti-corrosion treatment in those years, this solution was reasonable. Do you think the Armenians did nothing and just stamped out Rafiqs? No. The cargo Rafiq was very raw. The body rigidity was simply terrible. They had to reinforce it, which is why there's only a side door on one side. And the partition separating the cabin is a structural reinforcement. From the wall to the rear door. Length is 3,300 millimeters, wall to wall 1,640 millimeters, ceiling to floor 1,390 millimeters, payload is 850 kilograms. But I did once carry a ton, though not for long. Of course, there's also the rear door, but it hardly affects the body rigidity. An interesting detail, here you still have the early round tail lights. Later, those big rectangular ones appeared. And there's also the aluminum molding along the body, which actually holds the side panels from sliding down. Downward. Well, that's a joke, of course. The cabin. And here, there's nothing except the engine. Now I'll open it for you, get myself all covered in dust and dirt, and show you this marvel. There we go. Zemza from the mighty Volga. The engine displacement is 2,445 cubic centimeters. It's an inline four-cylinder with a maximum output of 95 horsepower. Maximum torque is 186 newton meters at 2,200 to 2,400 revolutions per minute. Oh my goodness, holy cow! Inside the cabin, the only thing you can adjust is your own detachment from reality. So, what else can I tell you? The instruments are from a Moskvich. The heater. No, it's also from a Moskvich. It used to be from a Volga, but there's one catch. It's positioned in such a way that if you pour in water during winter, it's almost impossible to drain it. As an upgrade, it has old Kamaz window defrosters instilled. And you know what else is cool here? Here, in order to pour in brake fluid, or really any kind of technical slippery fluid, you actually have to remove the entire necessary front dashboard. You can't just get in there, so real guys would drill a little hole on top so they could somehow use a syringe with an extension to pump all that stuff in there. An analog air conditioner. And for that, we're grateful. First, towards yourself. Note the suspension, a curse for these vans, taken from the Volga passenger car. On this ErAZ, based on the 21st model, it has leaf springs in the back, front coil springs, and stabilizer bar. There are shock absorbers. A passenger car suspension with a total vehicle weight of 2.6 tons. That's the vehicle plus 850 kilograms of cargo. And maybe a couple more people. So the primary structural load falls on the front passenger car suspension system. And the front suspension here was constantly breaking down. And even in the event that there was absolutely no heavy cargo in the back, it was still considered the primary and most significant load. If you take a closer look, my backside is positioned right above it, together with the engine. When it's empty, it can get stuck and spin its wheels on any surface. And when you brake, the rear lifts up and basically you're braking with the front end. But at the same time, the car has a unique driving style. You kind of float along in it, though to be honest, very slowly. And the big steering wheel lets you maneuver pretty nimbly in traffic. Maneuver? Yeah, even when you're driving straight, you're constantly maneuvering. There's so much play that you feel like singing an old Russian folk song. But again, it's not the steering gearbox that's loose. It is actually the structural frame rail that the gearbox is firmly attached to that is moving around quite a bit. Honestly, it's giving me a real nervous tick just watching it. The steering gearbox itself is on a Volga. If you take a close look at where it's mounted, you'll be guaranteed to go gray. When you turn the wheel, the metal starts to bend. That's why everything there has already been welded, re-welded, and reinforced. Still, it's not enough. The car consumes roughly 12 liters per 100 kilometers, and considering various small loads, plus Raza and Rafa, were carried by Gazans and Zils with a bucketful's consumption, the state's economic efficiency is clear. The quality of Armenian cars is the stuff of legend. But which one is worse, Rafik or ErAZ? That's a highly debatable question. But I truly want to say, the Armenian people really tried their best to produce decent and reliable cars, but they could only do so within the limited conditions available. For context, at that time in the USSR, there were only 2 factories with an assembly pusher overhead conveyor. The first was ErAZ. The factory was ramping up production at a rapid pace. New workshops, new equipment, and the output of cars was constantly increasing. New independent models were being developed. But it all ended with the collapse. The factory tried to survive. They produced new models, new cars built on old foundations. In 2002, the factory went bankrupt. The spring wind blows over the country, and with each day, life feels more joyful. And no one in the world knows how to laugh and love better than we do. But we will furrow our brows sternly if an enemy tries to break us. We love our motherland like a bride. We cherish her as tenderly as a mother. We didn't preserve it, and now we're all paying the price. But we look to the future with hope. Let's continue.